Yeah, so what's going to be the argument for conceptual realism? What's going to be the argument for metaphysical realism? And what's going to be the argument for fixed essences?
What do you mean by conceptual realism?
Yeah, so obviously this argument like relies on like a Aristotelian apparatus of how we determine concepts to be out there within reality or not. Right? Obviously, it's going to rely on some sort of realism. What's going to be the motivation for that for metaphysical realism? It can be like anti-realist towards that.
Okay, right. So the thing I'm just gonna pose a reductio to the view that we don't have it, and by following that, I was gonna say realism is true. So if
You think there's a
met-
contradiction in denying metaphysical realism?
yeah, that's what I'm gonna point out.
All
So
right,
if
what's the P not P?
metaphysical, yeah, I'm explaining it in natural reason. I can give you the contradiction. If if metaphysical anti-realism was true, then we're gonna have to say that all of our experiences of these real things are illusions. But if these things were illusions, it would have to be worked on by another, or we'd have to
Yeah,
have infusion of knowledge.
yeah. So the first part, I would even grant the first part of your
And
conditional.
hmm?
Yeah, so I could take it that we can have this metaphysical discourse without any putting any metaphysical machinery outside of your conceptual schema. For example, we can have like we would adopt like a type of conceptual scheme. We can have this type of talk act as if it's true. It could just yield pragmatical success relative to a conceptual schema without committing
Yeah.
myself. Okay, if you're signing off on that, then there's no like P not P with that. You want to conclude?
So when we talk about, yeah, obviously that's what I'm saying. You could say these serve some sort of pragmatic basis, if I understood you right, that our experiences do,
No,
and they're not
no.
any sort of real thing, right?
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that we can have this metaphysical talk without committing ourselves to a realist view upon it being discussed internal to your conceptual scheme. For example, like I can have like a whole bunch of constituents fixed within my conceptual scheme, and I could just take a
Yeah.
deflationary view on the metaphysics, and we can have this talk for coordination or intelligibility regarding the discourse without committing to these things actually being categorized in the actual world, independent of your conceptual scheme.
Right. So then, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You're just gonna say that, well, it
Wait,
can
where's
just
the P
be,
not? What then? What's the P and not
yeah,
P with that?
listen, yeah, listen. Let me finish. You're gonna say it's in your conceptual scheme, but to say that is just to say that your senses are moving such that it deceives your perception.
We're not
And if
talking
that's
about the
the case,
senses.
we're already gonna have to have an infusion of knowledge.
That's the category error. We're not talking about. Do you know what a conceptual schema is?
Isn't the conceptual schema just the framework of your knowledge? Or
It's
am
not a
I
framework of.
missing?
Yeah, it's not a framework of your knowledge, right? Yeah, I just take a conceptual scheme to be like a system of representation and inference or inferential networks that we would adopt in order to organize experience or make predictions and even coordinate action. And I just take knowledge to be something that is within a conceptual scheme or is some sort of status that's conferred on claims within an adopted conceptual scheme. So, for example, if you're like a realist, you would probably say that your scheme correctly categorizes what's out there within reality or not, right? Because given that you're committing to like a hard realist view regarding the metaphysical entities being discussed within your given scheme. Now, I'm saying that we can have this talk without adopting that given conceptual schema. If we don't have to commit to the whole metaphysical realist apparatus and the conceptual realist apparatus, because I highlighted that earlier. Now, there's not going to be any P and not P, presumably, with this taking like a deflationary view on this type of talk, right? Without it purporting any metaphysical machinery within reality.
Mhm. Yeah, listen, I get what you're trying to say, but I'm gonna say that if we're gonna say that, well, these normative, these things in your just things in your conceptual schema, then we're gonna have to possess the knowledge in ourselves. We do not gain it from some outside source, or else realism would be true because then we're interacting with
What do
something
you
else and gaining
what do you mean
something
by the
from another
knowledge?
being.
I'm sorry. What do you mean by the knowledge gained from within ourselves? Did you hear the distinction between the conceptual scheme and what knowledge is?
What's your distinction? I got a call because I might have missed that.
Yeah. So I said this prior. Like a conceptual scheme, I just take it to be like a system of representation and inference that we adopt in order to organize experience and make predictions. So that would include the concepts and it would include inferential norms that you would choose to adopt. But that's not the same thing as knowledge because knowledge is some sort of status that's conferred on claims within an adopted conceptual scheme. And those claims would satisfy the scheme's internal standards, right? So the knowledge there wouldn't be something that's independent of the scheme or gain independent of a scheme. Yeah, right. If you're appealing to the norms within your scheme to try to just make a reductio, that would be scheme independent. It seems like you would be relying back on the rules, which is internal to your scheme, which is in question, right? So it would kind of be like vicious. Um, so the knowledge is very distinct from the conceptual scheme in itself.
Well,
All right.
also,
So tell me if I'm getting this right. So you said a conceptual schema is the norms or the rules you accept in order to infer conclusions within your like knowledge, right? Or within yourself, not
No,
knowledge.
no, 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 no. I told you the conceptual scheme or a conceptual scheme is a system of representation and inference that you would choose, or some given agent would choose to adopt in order to organize experience or make predictions or coordinate action. Right. So it would include concepts, and when I say concepts, there's what would count as an object or a property or some sort of norm. Will also include inferential rules like logic or probability or default rules. So we just take conceptual schemes to be adopted and not metaphysically discovered, right? And so we would evaluate schemes by their pragmatic utility or the structurality, right? So we can evaluate them given their predictive success or their explanatory power, right? And knowledge is just going to be something that is conferred upon claims within an adopted conceptual scheme that you would choose to, right? And we talk about the knowledge, whether or not those claims would satisfy a given conceptual scheme's internal standards.
Yeah.
So knowledge is just going to be
also,
something internal to the scheme. If knowledge is something internal to a
what-
scheme, then the reductive doesn't go through. Knowledge is something that is internal to a scheme, therefore the reductive doesn't go through.
All right.
Also, I just wanted to comment on something that you put in your syllogism.
Wait, before
whyfun,
we're talking, hold on. Oh, we can talk about that after.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing you're saying. First off, I'm just gonna. This is the only thing that knowledge would assume under my conceptual scheme. It would just be the three laws of thought, like classically understood: the law of non-contradiction, the law of identity, and the law of excluded mid. Or do we accept these by default? Like, can we agree on these? Or no?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I would be agnostic on that. I don't really. I just like. I don't accept all of the laws of logic. But do you take the laws of logic to be something that's schema independent?
I don't care to debate that right now. So that's why I was asking you if we can get a baseline agreement on that. Because if not, then I don't really see a point in talking. Because I don't think you can really.
Well, we could have a point in talking, and we
can
just give like a meta analysis of your conceptual scheme. Right? We can still talk about that. But if you take it that the laws of logic is something that's going to be scheme independent, I take all the laws of logic to be representative only within a scheme, then I would have to put that into question.
Yeah, no, I'm saying we can just end it here for not gonna like take it to be true. Because I don't.
Yeah,
That's the assumption that I came in here with.
I mean, yeah, the laws of logic. You could take the laws of logic to be true, but you still haven't motivated your metaphysical realism.
If we take it to be true, then we can get to the reasoning. That's my point.
Do you think like the reasoning, right? Do you think metaphysical realism is necessary to be cashed out if the laws of logic is agreed upon being true?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is the argument for that? That's very strange.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna get to. So we're gonna have to say, if we hold the laws of logic, that the content of the thing we're experiencing is either intrinsic or extrinsic. If it's extrinsic, then metaphysical realism is true. So we have to say that it is intrinsic.
That's a non sequitur. That's extremely non sequitur, and it's like a question back. You want to conclude?
How's that a question back?
Because you're appealing back to the norm discovered within your internal conceptual scheme.
You asked me for the argument for.
Remember when I told you
logic, this would be true
within the laws of logic? No, the laws of logic is not going to motivate the account of realism there, right? Well, what does that have to do with the account of metaphysical realism being motivated? It just has
the
nothing
content's
to do with it.
External. Yeah, because metaphysical realism is just the being as being.
What?
Being mind independent. So if we're gonna say there is being independent of some mind, then we're gonna say that metaphysical realism is true because there is some sort of being in itself.
Okay, but yeah, that's in question. But I'm confused on whether or not the laws of logic. If I grant the laws of logic, how would that motivate? How would that motivate metaphysical realism? I'm so confused. Are you using the laws of logic to motivate metaphysical realism, or what?
Because you asked me if the laws of logic, if it's necessary following the laws of logic, and I was saying yes.
No, I'm not saying it. No, I'm not saying if it's necessarily following the laws of logic. I'm saying that do you think agreeing upon the laws of logic is necessary for metaphysical realism to be true? Right. That's just the idea that there's a mind-independent reality in the world, to have a determinate structure out there that your concepts would correctly categorize what's out there or not. And the argument you provided for that just begged the question. So I could just reject the quiddity. I can reject the composite essay in quiddity,